Hello and welcome to IGPP Expert Talks. I'm Heena Goswami, Editorial Consultant with IGPP, Institute for Governance, Policies and Politics, New Delhi. I'm very excited as today, on the Women's Day, the day we celebrate and recognize women's indispensable contribution to the existence and continuation of human life and civilization. We are set for another all women's panel discussion. And joining me today are three remarkable women with whom I discuss the ever changing contours of human existence. Be it the invention of fire, wheel, or writing, innovations have played an important role in ensuring the march of humanity forward. From printing press and books to radio, TV, internet, and now AI, technology has also proved decisive in values and forms that any society acquires. As a student of history and society, and through the work on technological policy at IGPP in recent years, what concerns me and us as women is the effect of all these development on women in our society. How technology is helping young girls in small villages in India to study and explore opportunities in this vast world, and how it is helping or deterring women in corporate world or any democracy are some concerns worth pondering upon. What impact the new DPDP Act or the AI guidelines presented by METI in India would have us on women here, or how the Take It Down bill pursued by US's First Lady Melania Trump in the US would impact women in politics defines my concerns around technology and women in democracy. And to discuss these questions, we are joined today by Ms. N.S. Nappinai, a senior advocate in the Supreme Court and founder of Cyber Sathi, an organization working on issues in the cyber world. Ms. Simran Sodhi, a senior journalist who has worked with some of the most prestigious institutions in the country and abroad for last 3 decades, and Ms. Nidhi Sudhan, co-founder of Citizens Digital Foundation, whose motto is making technology work for your well-being, your privacy, your autonomy, your productivity, and you. A mammoth task in today's world driven and dominated by technology. I welcome you all to this panel discussion, and I'm very honored to have you join us today.
Happy to be here.
So I'll dive into the questions. Ms. Nappinai, do you see technology as a true tool for empowerment, or is it merely an illusion for progress when it comes to gender equity?
Whenever you ask a question of a lawyer, our response always is, it depends. So for this question also, I'll have to start off with it depends. Because, technology is something that's ephemeral, but quite real in our lives today. So, why I'm saying it depends is when you look at how technology changed our lives, and it certainly has. It has expanded horizons for people, especially women. It has given us a broader spectrum to work on. It has helped us reach out to regions which were beyond imagination. I mean, imagine a small business in a small village in India being able to reach across the world and offer their products across the world, right? And that's technology for you. And that's the kind of empowerment it did for women, particularly. It gave them information and knowledge in their hands. It gave them reach beyond just the four walls of their houses or the confines of a village or a town or city where they live in. It gave them reach and it expanded their horizons in a way they could not have imagined. With it came a lot of vulnerabilities and threats too. We as women thought when we were venturing out on digital platforms that it was much safer because you're not getting into a dark alley in a street. You're just going online, you're sitting in the safety of your home. So you thought you were safe, home, office, wherever, right? But you are distanced from the places you're visiting through your digital device. But you go there and you realize, as a woman, you're still a vulnerable target. You're still going to be harassed, intimidated. You're going to suffer online in the same way or probably more than in the real world. Because just like how technology gave you this wide reach, so has it the criminals, so has it the predators, so has it the offenders who would want to troll you or bully you. So you'll have to understand that every good has another side to the coin and take it with caution. So don't shy away from technology. Use it by all means because it's there for us to use, it's there for us to adapt to, and it's there for us to grow with. But do so with caution, do so with the understanding that this is not as safe as it seems, it's not as distanced as it appears. It carries the same or different kinds of threats, vulnerabilities, harms, and social violations. So be careful. That's all my opening statement would be on this aspect.
I also feel that every time a new technology has evolved, and going back to even printing press, women as a group have been certainly targeted. When books were invented, you had this discourse on which course and how to hunt down which, how to put them on trial and burn them. You had mobile phones with a camera, and the first thing that was being spread were pornographic videos. And now, same with AI and social media.
If
Uh,
you're different, then you are a target. That's what it probably means.
Miss Simran, you have been observing and working on world politics closely, and we see world politics being dominated by technology, big techs, and people like Elon Musk and Zuckerberg who control technology. What impact do you think it would have on women in the coming future?
Okay, Hina, I think as you pointed out, we see that the world of technology is changing very fast. But and as you pointed out, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, so these are all men who are controlling the technology. So I think for me that is a very first information, that the men at the top who are evolving, who are working with technology, are not all men, but they're mostly men. And I think that is where my concern starts, right? So we look at technology as one of the panelists pointed out, in a very positive fashion. It is there, we all want to use it for our betterment. But I think what is happening with time, and if we look at the political landscape, technology has become another tool, rather, unfortunately, where you can target women who are in the public sphere. So, whether you are a woman politician or you hold any public office, I think it has become very easy now. You use deepfake, create images, create videos that show women in positions, or in videos which are very intimate, which are fake. So that spreads a negative narrative about women. So one can say that you can also use that for men. Yes, technology that way as well. Yes, you can do a deep fake of a man also, you can do a deep fake of a woman also. But the fact is, we live in a society, I think globally, not just India, where women are always judged more harshly for their standing in a society. So, my fear is, when I look at the political landscape, at the changing world order, and we have people like Musk and we have Mark Zuckerberg, uh, uh, I think this is going to be a tough fight for women, because women have to ensure that laws are put in place, restrictions are put in place, which gives them some kind of a control over their own images. It's very easy. You can go to my Facebook, you can take my pictures from Facebook, and using deepfake, you can create a video which is fake, but which would potentially be very embarrassing for any woman out there. So let me say that I am on the edge. I'm not very sure how this is going to go forward, and I hope that I'm wrong. That technology does not become another tool where you're forcing more and more women out of the public sphere.
Miss Nidhi, you have been talking about citizens' right in technological world, and how do you reflect on the position of women in this digital world? And is technology helping women, or is it curtailing their freedoms?
Thanks, Heena. Thanks for having me, and it's great to be on the same panel as Ms. Nappinai and Ms. Simran. Um, to that question, I'm not going to pick a binary side. At Citizen Digital Foundation, we've always been clear about looking into nuances and complexities of an issue. Will technology in the given ecosystem work for women? It should, theoretically, as it is meant to uplift everybody in the society. But unfortunately, given who makes technologies, who controls it, who designs it, who distributes it, there is a lot of the power asymmetry that sets in. And like Ms. Nappinai as well as Ms. Simran has pointed out, a lot of the makers today belong to a certain privileged gender, privileged race, which means that the reflections or the ideas of how the world should be run also gets coded into the systems that the rest of the world are using. So if you are going to have women in the room where technologies are being designed, yes, technology will work for women. If you're going to have people of color, Indian women, Asian women, African women, Latin women who are going to be in the rooms where technology is designed and the decisions around technology is being taken, then yes, technology will work for women. But that's not the case. So that is why it is important more than ever. This is possibly the time where inclusive technologies, diversity and representation in technology is most important. There is no thinking of whether it's meant to do the good that it has been designed to do, which Ms. Nappinai listed out at the beginning. The four of us today are sitting in this room virtually because technology enables us to do so. But at the same time, we are aware of all the struggles, all the battles that even us with all our earned privileges still have. And then there is a whole community of people, women, the marginalized in India, who don't even have the privileges we have. And then it becomes all the more difficult for them. And I think India is one of the countries where the gender digital divide is really high. And if that is the case, already with social media and the internet and how it's still not benefited women the same way as it has others, then with AI coming in, it's going to be a deeper challenge because all these biases, all these discriminations and disadvantages are getting coded into larger and larger technologies. And Heena, you mentioned quite rightly at the invent of any big technology, right from printing press to the radio to anything else, it's always the disadvantaged who are targeted first. And women have always faced the brunt of those issues, which is why a lot of these issues make us angry. But at the same time, we need to also understand that with the technologies that we live in today, especially social media and the filter bubbles that it creates, unfortunately, the other side is not even able to see the history and the background that we're coming from, because we are all constantly polarized and thinking of our own issues that are amplified for us and never in ways that we could understand the other side. So men are struggling as well, but in their struggles, they are not able to see the struggles that women have historically faced, which is why sometimes all these conversations become very one-sided, right? So the other day also I was speaking somewhere where I said that it's most important that we have rooms where conversations can be facilitated with all the people that are impacted in various ways and tech be designed and developed equitably. So I'll leave the first thought at that.
Taking forward what Ms. Nidhi just pointed out, Nappinai ma'am, technology is creeping into every aspect of our society, and institutions are racing forward to ensure that they involve technology in their daily usage or how they run. But we also see that common women, particularly in a country like ours, India, women are not very well versed with technology. How do you think that that would impact women's place in India, and how would that impact the coming generation of women?
Firstly, Nidhi, we are equally proud and happy to be in this panel with you. So thank you for being here. And Heena, to answer your question. So I wanted to start with a little bit of a statistics, and maybe a bit old, but I don't see much change happening over the last 5 years. So one of the statistics pointed out that only 70% of India is connected to the internet. Okay. So if you look at it, you will assume then that 35%, therefore, 50% of 70, therefore, are women who would be connected to the internet, but that's not really so. Because you have to understand that 70% is only reflective of the number of connections or devices that are taken, not reflective of the gender of people who would have it. Another study says less than 50% of women have access to the internet or to a device. So practically, when I look at it, and I look back to one of the sessions that we did as Cyber Sathi, I called it Lokpriya Cyber Sathi because this was a reach out to common citizens. This was in a village in Tonk where they very proudly announced that they don't give mobile phones to the girls. And this is a reality. So girls have to rely either on the mobile phone of the parents or a brother who will then be able to monitor what they are doing there. That's the whole idea, that you will not have privacy or rights of your own. So when I asked them, why would you do this? They said, नहीं तो लड़के लोग लड़के से बात करेंगे और भाग जाएंगे. So I said, then लड़के लोगों के पास mobile phones है क्या? They said, हाँ है उनके पास. The boys have mobile phones. So I said, फिर लड़के लोग नहीं भागेंगे? So they said, नहीं, मगर लड़के लोगों के पास मोबाइल नहीं है ना, इसीलिए. I said, तो फिर लड़की लोगों के पास मोबाइल दे दो, लड़कों के पास मत दीजिए, बॉयज के पास मत दीजिए, फिर भी भागेंगे नहीं ना. तो वैसे हमने ऐसे सोचा ही नहीं. क्यों? क्योंकि हम लोगों का आदत है लड़के लोगों को सब देते हैं, लड़कियों से निकाल देते. That's the reality of life. And as you rightly said in your opening statement, this is not just in India. It's global in terms of it being a matter of concern. So when we talk about technology and women, and today I'm limiting it to women since it's for Women's Day. Otherwise, as Nidhi rightly pointed out, we should be talking about the harms in terms of non-binary genders, because non-binary genders are the ones who are part of the soft target group. And you will be shocked at the kind of offenses that happen against LGBTQ+. It's really scary. So they're already discriminated against in real life, and you think online spaces will be, nicer to them. Unfortunately, not quite so. So today, when we are talking about technology and its impact, the first thing I see is how much of technology is percolating, who are the target audience to whom it is percolating, out of the target audience, how many are women, and how many of them are being allowed to use technology in an effective way. I close with another very small anecdote, and this is not from India, just to show you how this problem is global. So you have, and I've written about it in one of my articles, Brianna Wu's case. She was a journalist who was reporting on online gaming, which is considered a male bastion. Therefore, she has to be targeted and trolled and somehow pushed out of this male dominated space. Otherwise, she is the intruder there, right? So this happened to her. And another case which I handled, where this girl was based out of New York. So Brianna Wu is in the West Coast, and I'm talking about the East Coast now, who became a persistent victim of cyber stalking. So she gives a complaint about cyber stalking, and the answer she gets from the New York police is, why don't you just get off social media for a while? Brianna Wu was also told the same thing. Why don't you get off platforms for a while? Stop writing. So for this girl, it's her life, it's her right to decide whether she wants to be online or not, the victim of cyber stalking. For Brianna Wu, it is her profession. It's her vocation. It's not like she has a choice to keep away from online spaces. So when we speak about technology and the rights of women, I feel that we need to work towards that day where we will be assured of our rights, not just for a safe online space, because we will have to assume there will be violations. So we need a space where we will find our remedies also equally effectively.
I also want to add a small personal anecdote here. And both my parents are teachers and working, and my father is really fond of social media, and he's always putting pictures on WhatsApp status, Facebook, etc. But every time my mother picks up the phone just to check other people's status, he's rather upset about it. And there's always this. We are told that okay, if people are harassing you over social media, just take off. Don't be on social media, or don't put up pictures, or don't put up pictures a certain way. And it is always upon us. We are somehow being excluded from being part of this community, which feels rather very general, which feels very normal for men. And instead of being provided solution, their only way is to exclude us. uh, and that's always strange, and there's no comeback to it. I mean, there's a lot of need to change. I feel like we need to be normal. I mean, we want to enjoy as much as others do.
Absolutely right. Very valid point.
uh, Miss Simran, we are seeing worldwide the use of technology, and uh, we are seeing, especially in campaigns and in politics, AI has been used like never before. And we have talked about this again, how deep fakes of women have had sort of a disproportional impact on their chances of winning elections. Do you think women at the helm of political parties or a political system should understand technology better, and that can help them have a better say in politics? That it is for women now to take charge themselves to ensure that they are heard?
Uh, Hina, if we are talking of the political spectrum, I think women start with a disadvantage in any case in the political spectrum. And I've been covering politics, I've been writing on politics. I think the sad part is that even today, and I think this is true of all societies, not just India. We also saw that in the US, there was a big concern whether the US society at this point is even ready to elect a woman president, right? So that is one of the questions that came up when Kamala Harris was chosen as one of the candidates in the presidential polls. And I think it's quite a shocking thing that we live in this time, this age, and the United States had this huge question mark. And somewhere by electing Donald Trump, the US society has also answered it that maybe, yes, they are not ready to elect a woman president. So I think for women, when they step out in the public sphere, and I'm limiting my arguments to a very narrow field of women in public life, women in the political landscape. So I think women start with a disadvantage. One, they are underrepresented. They are not there is not enough candidates who are women. You go to any political party's office, you will find there are more men and there are less women. One fact which I found very interesting was that in India, the Bharatiya Janata Party is the largest party. It is in power in so many states in India. Until recently, it had no women CM. So Rekha Gupta is actually the first female CM of any BJP ruled state, and I think that reflects not the party; it just reflects how patriarchal our own society is, the way we look at women in public space. So that is my first concern. Your question that should women understand technology better? Yes, they should, because one, as as a gender group, as society moves on, we have to keep up with the technology. We should understand what AI is doing to us. We should understand how deep fakes are created. We should also understand what is the remedy that is required. I think for women, again, limiting my points to a very limited space, which is women in public space. I think women in public space have to be very careful of how their images can be distorted, how they can be pushed out of the public life. See, at the end of the day, for any woman, whether it is India, it is US, it is Europe, the fact of the matter is that too much of technology which is negative, even too much of trolling, I would say, on Twitter. We are all on Twitter, and we see it's horrendous sometimes. I think the trolling that women get just for putting out an opinion which someone may not like. So we can be the bigger person and we can say, okay, this is an opinion I don't like, but that is not how technology is working. My also I have a fear that as technology becomes stronger or it evolves more, it has to be made friendly to all genders. Twitter is one example. We have AI, we have deep fakes. So I think, for me, I think personally, women in public space, I think we need more. Yes, women need to understand technology better because that will give us an understanding of how to deal with the crisis better. So if I am getting trolled or if there is a deep fake of me out there, at least I will know how do I deal with this. I should know the solution, right? But I also think as technology evolves, we need more women in positions of power in developing technology. One of the problems coming up with AI is that AI is tapping into data, which in any case is already biased against women, right? So we have to deal with very basic issues. Women at the top will help because then you can somewhere make sure that AI is not going back to the old patriarchal models and taking all that data in it, which in effect will also reflect how few in the future also then women are at a disadvantaged position. So to answer your question, yes, women have to learn how to manage technology, but I think it's also a little it's also a space where we have to have a lot of caution going ahead.
Miss Nidhi, seen in the context of India, as technology is evolving, we are trying to, at the level of regulation, we are trying to ensure that our laws evolve with the technology, or there are enough guardrails in place to ensure that technology is leveraged for the best. Do you think that the DPDP Act or the present regulatory regime of technology in India, as it exists, is it helpful for women, or are we making the strides in right direction at the moment?
Once again, I'll address that with a bit more nuance. Um, so the DPDP is age gating of use of digital platforms itself has been problematic. That is one area where there's been a lot of discussion. Verified parental consent being required for every minor under the age of 18 as a single bracket itself is problematic, especially in a diverse and vast country like India. There are a bunch of challenges with that. When we just spoke about the gendered digital divide specifically in India, that makes it worse. Now we need to also look at the cultural approaches to how women and why women are not given phones or digital technology accesses. There's this whole paternalistic approach of protecting women from the bad things. So far it was the bad world outside. Now there are so many bad things happening online, or like Mr. Nappinai was saying, ladki bigad jayegi. All these are paternalistic approaches to why women are not given access to technology. So far, imagine a 13-year-old girl who wants to express her creativity or be online and connect with her friends or learn things outside of the scope of what her city or her community shows. If she needs to get online, as it is, needs to use a brother or a father or a mother's phone. And now with VPC setting in, the whole paternalistic approach to whether the parent will grant permission to a daughter or a son further gets exacerbated. So, in my opinion, that is not going to be helpful, especially with the gender divide that is there. Coming back to what Ms. Simran was saying earlier, the reason why we look at a lot of things from big tech's point of view, and whether there is the harms that we're talking about, the deep fakes and everything, there's also the aspect of indirect harms that we need to look at when it comes to women. And that is where regulation needs to step up more from a responsible or governance point of view than a paternalistic point of view that I was referring to. So often it is about what kind of tools can we put up so that women can take down any harmful content that is available. Instead, can we look at incentivizing technology platforms to not proliferate harmful content or proliferate any model or a tool that can cause or enable harm for women. So that is a preventive or proactive method that we speak about. It is essential to also look at that. Often the incentivization bit is never looked at because it enables businesses to prosper, but we do not draw the line when it comes to shareholder value and the harm that it causes the society. So the indirect harms that I'm referring to are things like targeting, profiling, making sure that there's behavior manipulation through not even targeted advertising, but targeted content. So how young women grow up thinking what is right, what is wrong about their bodies, about relationships, all that is being taught through these filter bubbles that are being served, primarily because it is hooking content. So that is the aspect that needs to be regulated at this point, instead of stepping in after a harm has happened. Yes, stepping in after a harm is also required. Curative or reactive solutions are also needed. But at the same time, preventive regulation is also necessary if we are to step out of the paternalistic approaches that we have so far to looking at harms to women.
Ms. Nappinai, seen at a global level, do you think the recent initiative by US's First Lady Melania Trump pushing the Take It Down bill in the US Congress, would it be a step further to make big tech and people like Musk responsible towards online threats and crimes against women?
You should really hope so, since they're all trying to take the protection of claiming that they're only subject to the US laws. But let me tell you a little bit of background on this. Before that, sorry to digress, but just one clarification on what Ms. Simran said earlier. Actually, Ms. Anandiben Patel took over from Mr. Narendra Modi when he demitted office as CM. So Ms. Rekha is not the first woman CM in that sense. I'm apolitical, I'm not a BJP spokesperson. It's just that factually there was a correction, and I am actually very proud of the fact that this government did give us a lady Minister of Defense. More than any other ministry, that a lady was appointed as a Minister of Defense was a big step forward from my perspective, considering that women had to approach the Supreme Court to get permanent commission. So, when you juxtapose this with the fact that you had a lady leading the defense, it was like a goosebump moment for me. So just on an aside on that, and yes, you're right. I just wanted to add that there's one report, I think, I don't remember where it was published now, but it was called Toxic Twitter. And why I wanted to bring this up is to point out how women politicians were targeted. The report said that women politicians particularly were getting nearly 10,000 tweets per day. We're talking about per day of toxicity. So how much of resilience would a woman need to have to stand up to this kind of an assault, not once, not twice, but day after day, and still stand her ground and still be able to achieve? So that brings me to this take it down aspect. Before we go to take it down, I want to point out to you that India, in this case, actually led from the front. I'm really happy to say I was very, very happy to have contributed to that move forward, and that came from the Supreme Court. It started with actual rape and gang rape videos being uploaded, and the non-profit Prajwala from Hyderabad wrote to the Chief Justice of India, and it became a suo motu criminal writ petition. The scope was expanded to include protection against children too. Long story short, a government committee was appointed. My contribution here was as amicus curiae or friend of the court before the Supreme Court, and also as part of the committee. And it was a non-adversarial process. Consensus proposals, including from big tech and the government, were placed before the court, and it became part of a court's order. In India, once a Supreme Court passes an order, it's called as precedent law, right? So we are talking about 2017. Interestingly, in May 2017, US, one of those, he may have otherwise been called a rabble-rouser, but he raised a very critical issue once, where he talked about this problem of women being targeted online, and also about child sexual abuse material online, etc., and for protective measures. Nidhi talked about protective and preventive measures, which are more critical, and I'm totally with it, and that's exactly what this Prajwala case brought about. What the consensus proposals did was, it brought a preventive and protective measure, which otherwise a law does not really look at, right? So Thanks to that, the intermediary guidelines are in place now. And in effect, what you have today is, this is called as passive filtration versus active filtration. Passive filtration is after you know identified content, you approach a platform, go to court, go to the police and ask for it to be taken down. Whereas active filtration is when nudity is identified using AI tools, when rape will involve offense against a woman, violence against a woman. So violent movement, sounds, etc. are detected. Then you can actively filter it also before it hits public domain. So between upload to public domain, you can still cause filtration. That was what Prajwala really dealt with from 2017 to now. In terms of filtration tools, in terms of protection of women and children online, I must say that India has contributed substantially because several of the remedies we evolved here went global. It has been expanded to capture what we colloquially refer to as revenge porn, but which is effectively sextortion, extortion using nude imagery, etc. So it's been expanded to that. It's been expanded to a lot of other aspects too of detecting fake news, hate speech, etc. So I must say that it has been very, very, it was really laudable that the Supreme Court led from the front here. After that, there was a G7 meeting in France where Charter for Cybercrime came out. Incidentally, US refused to sign it, claiming first, fundamental rights and free speech aspect. There again, this aspect about active filtration came up for protecting women and children online. Whilst that happened, today you have Melania Trump supporting Take It Down. So that's why I said I would definitely welcome it, because every time you reach out for a takedown, you're met with resistance saying we are not amenable to X laws or Y laws, we are a US based organization. Now, what answer would they have if a Take It Down bill becomes reality? But I'm very skeptical because every initiative that the US has taken, including at one point an Earn It bill, it didn't reach fruition. So we have to wait and watch where this goes. But the good news for Indians is Big Tech cannot take that recourse in India because today, under the intermediary guidelines, thanks to Prajwala, has made it mandatory for Big Tech to have a grievance officer, a nodal officer, etc., who have to respond to takedown requests pertaining to nudity within 24 hours. You don't need a court order, you don't need a police complaint. You can just give your representation to them and they have to act on it. And if they don't, you now have a second level of an appellate committee before government under MeitY, and only thereafter you need to run to court or police. That's the kind of simple and effective remedy that women and children have been given.
I would argue that one, however, cannot deny that there has been a rise in conservatism in politics around the world. And on that note, Ms. Simran, how do you feel the changes that we are seeing worldwide leaning towards conservatism, and people and Prime Minister Maloney has said that what herself, Trump, Milley, and Prime Minister Modi are doing are a new kind of statesmanship. How do you feel about women's chances in politics in this rising wave of conservatism?
See, Hina, I would come back to, I think, what I've said before. I think in any case, whether, you have the liberals in power or you have the conservatives, ruling a state, the position of a woman is always very precarious. And if you look at Europe or the US or India, I think everywhere women in US probably have a better access to technology. They can all own a mobile, for example. Something, in India, which as Ms. Nepipani pointed out, that girls are not given mobile. So maybe those very basic problems don't exist in the US. Every girl can just go to a store and they all have cards. They can just swipe a card and pick up a mobile. But I think I would say that for me the issue is slightly more nuanced. For me, the issue is whether a girl can walk into a store and she can swipe her card and she can buy a mobile, or she steals or her brother's phone for 15 minutes because she wants to access her Insta account, and she doesn't have a phone of her own, but she has her Insta account. I think the issues that we are dealing with, and with the rise of a very conservative political trend all over the world, what we are seeing is women's rights being curtailed. I think in a way that makes it a little difficult for women to assert themselves. We have the US, for example, and you mentioned the First Lady Melania's initiative, which was very welcome. But then I think as a journalist, my first question would be that, she is doing this, but the biggest supporter of her husband, the president, is Elon Musk, right? And Musk's muscle power, Musk's use of Twitter. I mean, we cannot underestimate that the use of Twitter really, or what X as it is called today, really helped President Trump's campaign. And life is complicated, right? You look at Musk and you see Musk's own relationship with women, and I'm not being any moralist, but it is just the way one looks at society. And I don't think with this rise where the US is now saying that Roe versus Wade is something we no longer believe in, that abortion is not a woman's right, women don't have a right over their own body. So this is the US saying it. So where does it lead countries where the education levels are lesser? So I think we in these conservative times, we are also heading into not just technology will absorb the thoughts which come out of political leadership. The technology is not something that is going to exist in a vacuum. Musk and his philosophy will find a way to penetrate into X, right? They are the people who are owning it. People like Mark Zuckerberg will control what Meta does. So my concern is also about the people behind it. I think who are mostly men who have, in my opinion, they are uh, how should I describe them? They are not men who seem very willing to give women too much of space, if I was to put it that way. And that is my concern, that with the rise of this kind of political discourse in the world, where does it leave women politically? And even if you have access to technology, what is the safety? What is your recourse? And how much can you fight on that technological level for your own political success or survival? And trolling and all, I think, is something we have all encountered, right? You are on Twitter, I'm on Twitter, I'm sure the other two panelists are on Twitter, and we've also been trolled. And this is so dreadful, because it really can wreck a person, right? So what is the recourse? I think the issue is that technology at the end of the day is not going to be different from us as humans functioning in a society with some values, liberal or conservative. And how do we make technology work for the betterment of our ideals, rather than technology becoming such a destructive and toxic force that we start limiting? Like, I don't have an Insta account, I don't want to have an Insta account, because this is too much of technology for me to handle. This is too much of exposure of myself on the social media, right? So there are people like us who are trying to self regulate, and this is not something I want to deal with. So maybe there needs to be a solution for people like us also, who are getting scared of all these platforms. So for me, this entire thing is new. It is exciting, AI, conservative, and the role of women. But I'm also very cautious. I'm also very much on the edge as to how we go forward as women in this.
Miss Nidhi, as big techs come to play an important role in politics, do you think that we need something like an enlightened big tech who can maybe help women find a voice in this digital world?
Do we honestly think they have the incentive to do that, given everything that is going on? At least since we have seen newer technologies emerge, whether it's in the form of internet, social media, while it has brought about a lot of access to liberal values, thought exchanges, creative expression, at the same time, given how the hands control the disbursement of technology, it has not been so. So when you talk about enlightened big tech, that is a hope that we should hold. Current world incentives, geopolitical incentives, do not favor that. It clearly favors the concentration of power and wealth with a few, and everything else right now is supportive of that. I would like to point to the Paris AI Action Summit, where from all the speeches that I heard from political leaders there, I was not there myself, but of course I was tuned into it. Um, Only India seemed to be talking about developing technologies for everyone, talking about how technology especially should benefit everyone in India. I sincerely hope it goes beyond the rhetoric on a political stage and is actually implemented in policy, in all the initiatives, especially now that India is planning to build its own AI models. This literally has to percolate down into those things. So when we talk about AI governance, so I know the Niti Aayog's report, AI for All, I think was published in 2018, advocates for that, but it remains at a principles level unless it is literally implemented in the form of multi-stakeholder collaborations, equitable oversight bodies, representative oversight bodies. So if those things are literally going to be actioned, then yes, we do have the hope of equitable technologies, at least in India, at least a shot towards that. But at the same time, globally, what is happening has to have a trickle down effect on India as well. So we cannot be all too hopeful as well. Simran talked about Mark Zuckerberg, and we know how they have rolled back their fact checking and in the name of free expression. We have seen how Musk, of course, has taken over a public social media platform and turned it into a personal gramophone. We have now seen Jeff Bezos take over Washington Post and decide what the editorial is going to sound like in not very concealed words and very evidently. We're seeing a bunch of people who look similar, who look alike, who are largely male, who are taking over the narrative of what the world should see, believe, learn, understand, and follow, which is highly problematic. So, coming back to your question and the answer to that, in today's political ecosystem, I do not think big tech is incentivized to do enlightened development of technologies for sure.
Now, as we wrap up this discussion, I want to end on an optimistic note, and I want to go to each of you and ask that in this world where there's rise of conservatism, we see the dominance of big techs in politics, there are no incentives for them to take a progressive path. Where do your hopes lie to ensure that women would somehow end up having a better future through technology in both democratic societies and in politics overall? Miss Nappinai?
So many interesting thoughts have come from each of the panelists, you know. So when Simran spoke about women's rights and the abortion rights, I was reminded of the privacy judgment, the Goswami judgment, which clearly talks about the right of women to their body and what they want to do with it. How far are we seeing really laws capturing it and making it a statutory right for us, right? So we have the right, but it still somehow seems a little elusive. So when Nidhi spoke about patriarchal approaches and protection as a means for suppressing women, I was reminded of this oft-repeated phrase I have come across again and again. I've made it again and again, that we need to differentiate between protection and protectionism. And again, the Goswami judgment talks about how in the, under the guise of protection, invariably rights of women are suppressed. So we need to really look at things from a different perspective if you're talking about democratic rights. And you very rightly raised this counter argument in terms of conservatism. I'm not even going to venture beyond the topic of today because that's a discussion which can probably span a day or days, right? We have our concerns and there are so many issues out there which are raising red flags. We'll pause them for the moment, but when we talk about women and conservatism and the reversal of Roe versus Wade and where it is taking us today, how much is the world reacting to these changes? How much are we as women understanding the regression, and what are the steps we are taking to protect ourselves? So I think that's the criticality. As a democracy, we have our rights. It's enshrined, and the assumption is that these rights, these fundamental rights, form part of the basic structure and therefore cannot be taken away at all. Keshwan and Bharti. Having said that, how far are we able to implement or enforce those rights? I personally feel that the systems have been sadly wanting at every step. So when we talk about technology and women, from the stage of involving women in the development of technology, in use of technology, you asked me earlier about awareness of technology in women. Let me tell you, awareness of technology is not gender specific. Women are equally equipped to deal with technology as are men. You just take half an hour with any woman. Yeah? We assume illiteracy means digital illiteracy. It is not so. Many people who are the best hackers in the world are illiterate otherwise in the legacy system kind of situation, but they are super digitally literate, and that includes a lot of women too. You have a lot of women in STEM, you have a lot of women practicing STEM, but they are the invisible lot because they have not had the access to education or degrees, etc. So those are the concerns that I have, that we need to acknowledge their role, ability, and most importantly, and I think, often we tend to look westward, and we've already heard about where the West is heading right now. Maybe now we can look a little bit to the East, and I found a very interesting learning there. I was speaking to a Chinese journalist, and I was asking her about safety of women in China on the streets. And I got a very interesting answer saying they are very safe. I said, why? She said, because we form a substantial part of the workforce. So for China, it is critical to ensure that women remain part of the workforce, and therefore safety is built into the system. So this is a real learning for me. And I thought that's a critical aspect that we should focus on too. How do we make it? All this while we are talking about our narrative and what we want. Let's make our narrative the men's narrative. Let's make it important for the men to ensure that we are part of the workforce and we are given equality, and we are treated as equals because it helps them. Maybe then we will actually get it. Equality, that is.
Miss Simran?
So, Hina, for me, I think the first positive is that there are four of us, I think smart, intelligent women sitting in a virtual room, and we are able to discuss these things in a logical manner. So, that is my hope going forward, that more and more women will come through the ranks. The access to knowledge, the access to education, formal education, informal education. So I, going forward, whether it is women in technology, the political space, and a very changing landscape, we have liberals, we have conservatives, we have the left wing, we have the right wing. But I think I would place my hope on the simple fact that women have fought for centuries. And in your opening remarks, you said when the printing press came out, it was about hunting the witches. So we've traveled that distance, right? We are no longer hunting for them. Maybe we are virtually, but still we have progressed. So I would put my faith in women more than in men. Let me be very honest. I would put more faith in the community of sisterhood that I think women have with one another, and they need to form as we go forward, because the world of technology will also need women to figure a lot of issues out together. If a deep fake is creating problems for one woman, I think the message for the rest of us is that tomorrow it can be me, tomorrow it can be you. So I think the collective strength of women will help. And I think the laws, the regulation, the implementation all has to come in place. But I as a person always go back very much to the basics. And for me, the basics here also is that women will take charge. They've always done it. And I hope, whether you are living in the US, you're living in Paris, or you're living in Delhi, At the end of the day, all women will say that this is my body, this is my life, this is my right. And if I choose to be in the public space and technology is shaping the future landscape, then I should learn, I should get a hold of technology, I should know what are the rules which will regulate it, and I should know how I can use it for my betterment. Also, I will need the tools to fight it when there is a distortion of me and my image, or women in general. So I think, as you said, leaving it optimistically, I put a lot of faith in women's abilities to figure this out as we go forward.
Miss Nidhi.
Thank you. All those great ideas, and hope is one thing that I have a lot. So, yes, I place most of my hope in the youth because they are at this very sweet spot of being idealistic and ready to take on decision making roles eventually. So if we shape them right, or if we kind of uh, give them ideas to think of outside the box, they'd be able to question a lot of status quo as they go forward. So through CDF's work, we have facilitated things like the Youth Dialogue Forum or even the STEM Fem Fellowship, where we're trying to bring more people into real rooms for conversations instead of social media conversations, because we know social media conversations are meant to polarize, meant to divide, meant to make us angry and anxious, and never really reach a consensus or a constructive problem solving kind of a situation. So having said that, at the same time, in India, it is also necessary that we speak beyond cultural and state boundaries as well. Sometimes all the conversations that some civil society organizations do get relegated to those geographies. We actively try to partner and speak with other organizations in the space who are either developing tech solutions and tools to tackle fake news, misinformation, harassment of women, or something of that sort, while we continue to do the work of enabling people from our society. So any conversation that any room where there's a conversation happening between people with differing opinions will lead to an objective of common value sharing, because that's where people realize that it's not about what the other person is thinking of me as, maybe somebody who's trying to hurt, offend, or bring my ego into it. Instead, the conversation can look at achieving a common goal. So that is one hope that I hope that I kind of hold in the current scenario. The other thing is that India is also at the cusp of taking over a narrative. Now, we have seen hegemonies of popular culture being held by Hollywood for a long time, and today South Korea has taken it over. We have seen hegemonies of tech being held by Western countries. Now China is taking it over, and India is a huge player in that space. So whether it comes to semiconductors or UPIs, we are owning those narratives, and we know where we can get those head start. So it is ultimately about showing the world, as the world's largest democracy, showing the world that tech can be developed safely, responsibly, with governance systems in place, and still lead at innovation, is something that India is at the cusp of achieving. So if we can be those leaders in that space, I think that's the biggest hope I hold, at least with the kind of work that we are doing at CDF. I'm hoping the kind of movements that pick up from that, we should become that nation soon.
My hope is with women and men who are kind enough to love them and cherish them. And I hope that all the big techs and the world leaders realize that the kind of conservatism, the kind of politics they are preaching would also impact people in their own lives and may devastate their lives. Uh, but I mean, there's hope. We can only hope. Thank you so much for joining us today. And very simple, but very powerful and very insightful remarks all of you made. And I feel there's so much to learn from this conversation, and so many cues that anybody who wants to ensure a more just world can take. Thank you for joining me today on